So I went out to my Baptist car this morning and saw it was covered in Baird poop. In this video, I'm gonna clean off the Batmobile. So what is the missing piece in James Baird's King of Kings? I think overall it's a good book. It's mid. Presbys are gonna presby. So the question of the missing piece is specifically in light of the fact that it was published by a Baptist publisher, yet written by a Presbyterian and forwarded by a Presbyterian. So we're gonna consider what the missing piece of King of Kings is by considering the controversy itself, give an overview of Baird's book, highlight an article written by Casey McCall, which I don't think got enough attention, and then add what I think is the missing piece of James Baird's King of Kings. What's missing from King of Kings? Let's go. So Founders Ministries published a book written by a Presbyterian and forwarded by a Presbyterian called King of Kings by James Baird. I love Founders Ministries. I'm making this video because I love Founders Ministries. And I think that Founders needs to ask themselves whether or not the political theology that is in King of Kings has more than just simply a slightly awkward relationship with the other two kingdom theology resources that they have published.
Very interested in it, but you're Presbyterian, and sometimes the Presbyterian understanding of political theology goes beyond what my Baptist conscience is comfortable with. But in reading what you wrote, man, it's just like, yeah, this is great. Awesome. This fits with our Protestant Reformed heritage that both Baptists and Presbyterians can unite on. And we would have some differences if we went further on specifics. And even amongst Presbyterians, you guys would have differences. And certainly that's true among the Baptists. But man, this is just like bread and butter stuff.
That caused a little bit of an extra fluffle. Written by a Presbyterian, forwarded by a Presbyterian, strange publication choice from Founders Ministries. And he highlights the critical review by Casey McCall. It voices some of my concerns. I have not even read the book, though the content is very predictable. Well, people didn't like that he said that he hadn't read the book, but have I read the book? Should I even be making this video? Tom Askell had a little bit to say about that. Shut up. But in McCall's article, he does try to draw attention to the reasons why it's strange for there to be a theological partnership between Baird, a Presbyterian, and Founders Ministries, a confessionally Baptist institution. In order to see why this is strange, you have to pull back just a little bit and compare the entirety of the system of Baptist theology and the entirety of the system of Presbyterianism.
All systems A-OK. Right.
It's not as simple as just Baptists don't baptize babies and Presbyterians do. But the infant baptism in Presbyterianism is part of an entire system.
Fair enough.
At risk of oversimplification, I am comparing a, quote, Baptist system with a, quote, Presbyterian system. Some have been pushing back on me taking issue with Founders publishing a Presbyterian. Am I not being hypocritical for also promoting works written by Presbyterians like David Van Drunen? That's very fair. If it seems hypocritical enough for you to dismiss my video, I understand. But ask yourself, are there some forms of Presbyterian political thought that are less consistent with Baptist principles? If yes, then which ones? And is it not fair to at least raise awareness of those forms which may fit uncomfortably with our Baptist emphasis on religious toleration? Is there a pattern of distancing ourselves from congregational principles, and does that pattern help explain why some aren't staying Baptist? Now, more specifically, Baptists, Credo Baptists, don't baptize someone without there being a credible profession of faith. So in other words, in order for us to baptize you, in order of the baptism, there needs to be a profession of faith, a confession of faith that comports with a holy lifestyle. And so for Baptists, the focus, the pursuit, it's a key word, the pursuit is a holy church made up of only believers. That's the pursuit. But Presbyterians don't pursue holy churches in the same way that Baptists do. They do not require a credible profession of faith before baptism. Now, they assume that their children are going to grow up to be Christians, and that's one reason they don't. And the result of this is that Presbyterian churches tend to be a mixture of both believers and unbelievers. And it's not to say that Baptists don't have that problem as well, but it's the Baptist pursuit that all the churches are made up of only Christians. And one of the reasons for this contrast is that Baptists believe that the church's membership needs to match the membership of all of those in the covenant of grace.
That's interesting.
But Presbyterian covenant theology is different. They believe that the children of believers are in the covenant of grace. So therefore, the way that Baptists pursue the holiness of the church emphasizes the nature of the holiness of the church differently than Presbyterians do, and their sense of separation is a result of that fact. So Baptists believe that the church is made up of a people who have been separated from the world, unmixed. a pure people, and the state surrounding the church may be mixed. But the Presbyterian view of the church, their view of the separateness of the church, is less distinctive than in Baptist theology.
That's interesting.
But for Presbyterians, you have to take infant baptism and Presbyterian church government and therefore their political theology all as one big bag of theology. In fact, James Baird points this out when he says, I don't want you to take just one ingredient from what I'm saying. I want you to have the entire dish. He actually says, I want you to taste my soup and not my vinegar. And so what you have and what is being called into question is why a Baptist publisher would promote, no pun intended, a Presbyterian system. Yeah, of course it would be weird for founders to publish a book on infant baptism. But the way of thinking in a Presbyterian system that results in a Paedo-Baptist view or an infant baptism view is part of a system that has less than Baptistic views of political theology as well. I wouldn't have to read a book published by a Baptist publishing house that is pro-infant baptism for me to be able to step back and say, I haven't read the book, but it's kind of weird for a Baptist publisher to be publishing a book that is pro-infant baptism. But I am going to proceed with an overview of Baird's book and McCall's criticisms of it before I give what I think is the missing piece from King of Kings. But did I even read the book? The entire book is fleshing out a syllogism. Now, what is a syllogism? A syllogism is in which you stack up premises to come to a conclusion. And I'll just say right at the start that a syllogism can be valid, like it can logically check out, while not being sound, not necessarily being true. And so I would say that James Baird's syllogism is valid, but it's unsound. And this is his syllogism. Premise 1, government must protect the public good. Premise 2, as the only true religion, Christianity is part of the public good. Conclusion, government must promote Christianity as the only true religion.
Okay, those are some valid arguments.
And he says that by promoting, he means the activity of encouraging, supporting, advancing, or furthering the progress of something.
I want a promotion!
Also in the book, he mentions that he's just going to set forth the system and that theonomists or Reformed to Kingdom theology or different Reformed people with their different systems can decide for themselves whether or not it fits in the book. So he does function with a self-awareness that this is going to have an awkward relationship with certain Reformed political theologies. In the book, he says government officials are our highest authority.
Over the head!
Is that Baptistic? Do we think that congregations have the highest authority? Do we, as a Baptist publishing house, believe that governing officials are our highest authority? He says, quoting Westminster Confession 129, that all superiors must take care of soul and body, and that governing officials are our highest superiors, so this duty applies to them as well. Here's a long quote. Let me just blow through this real quick. Protect and promote true religion. For the sake of freedom, government officials must protect and promote true religion. So here's the issue of protection and promotion. So I got on X and I asked, government must promote Christianity or protect Christianity? At the time of recording this, had 242 votes. 33% said government must promote Christianity, but 66% said protect Christianity. Now, there were tons of people who said both, but when you say both, I think that it actually aligns more with James Baird, who says promote and protect. Mikey said promotion by protection. Duff, there he is. Important question. Luke said neither. Eddie said both. Catapatasma said according to what? By what standard? But both. Again, if you read James Baird's book, which, did I? He means both. And I'll just say I'm asking promote or protect as stimulating terms that can get us thinking about this, because and I'll get to this at the end of the video when I get to what the missing piece is, but I think you can still choose one or all of these and say, oh, promote, protect, prefer Christianity among all other religions, and still come out safe with a religious liberty emphasis. But you have to stay tuned to see what my missing piece is. Or not, because you still don't even know if I read the book or not. Now on to Casey McCall's article. I just want to draw attention to two places in his article. One, he draws attention to the fact that Baird said that there is overwhelming evidence for his thesis that government must promote Christianity as the true religion. He cites all these Old Testament passages, but McCall notes this view ignores any discontinuity between Old and New Covenants, once again raising questions about the theological partnership between Baird and founders. Unlike ancient Israel, we are not in a holy covenant with the Lord. But secondly, I thought that McCall's analysis of Baird's syllogism was very poignant. He crafts his own syllogism. First premise, government must promote the public good. Second premise, disciplining children in the home contributes to the public good. Conclusion, government must discipline children in the home. And that gets back to the idea of, oh, well, governing officials, they are our highest authority. Well, they have a different calling, and I think that fathers are a bedrock of society, but also a very different role than a president. But did I even read the book? This does, in large part, serve as an attempt to bring authority and structure back into America, and I think that I'm just trying to say, yes and amen, let's do so, and stay Baptist, though.
Fair enough.
I actually recently gave a talk at Reformed Theological Seminary on how Congregationalism offers a contribution to the need for structure and authority in postmodern life and in America in 2025. I uploaded that entire talk to my Patreon, so check that out. So now on to what I believe is the missing piece of King of Kings by James Baird. And the missing piece is, what expression of Christianity must government prefer? I came up with my own syllogism. You ready? Premise 1. Religious liberty is best for the government and the church. Premise 2. Baptists are the best proponents of religious liberty. Conclusion. Therefore, government must protect the Baptists.
You really just say that?
And one of the reasons for this is because there are so many different expressions of evangelical Christianity and Christianity as a whole, not to mention there are other religions and other faiths as well. But Orthodox Christianity, especially evangelicalism, and especially the Baptists, are the best proponents of religious liberty and the separation of church and state. And if you don't like the term separation of church and state, I've been advocating for separation of the mission of the church from the mission of the state. Separation of the missions of church and state.
Whoa, unbelievable.
And because we're the best proponents of this, perhaps protecting Baptists as the best, most biblical representatives of Christianity, but also the best proponents of religious liberty, would also be, therefore, protecting all other different expressions of evangelicalism, Christianity, and other religions. So in all this attempt to restructure our government and place authority and the importance of hierarchy back into the conversation, don't forget Congregationalism and the Baptist way, or the congregational way, as a very key ingredient in the health and stability that we experience in America today. We're known for being burned at the stake, but not for burning anyone at the stake. And so because of this, and especially because Baptists are Orthodox and Catholic Christians, you are now protecting religion and orthodoxy, but also protecting the individual conscience. And I think that this would be actually a better option than Judeo-Christianity as the term that we use to describe the religious liberty or the values evangelicalism that we've been promoting. I think that protecting the Baptist faith, and if you want to use the word promote, fine, promote the Baptists, promote our theology, because I think in so doing, you are now promoting evangelical and Catholic and Orthodox theology while also protecting the religious liberty for all. You don't lose solid theology and sound doctrine. You don't lose righteous living, but you also don't lose the dignity of the individuals and their choice to worship differently. But on Judeo-Christianity, I'll make another video on that in the future. I'm just saying that for now, perhaps the Baptists or the Baptist faith, or evangelicalism would be something better to prefer than the term Judeo-Christianity. This could satisfy the right, who want an emphasis on the fact that government is held accountable and that government has a role to do something. Yes, it does. Protect the Baptists. But it also satisfies those on the left who are uncomfortable with certain aspects of Orthodox Christianity, but they see that there is a version of evangelical Christianity which is less hostile to other expressions of faith. And perhaps most importantly, James Baird's King of Kings cannot do this. Satisfy both left and right. But did I even read the book? And in fact, I agree with James Baird that Christianity, he says in his book, is best for public good, and that Christians should be encouraged to pursue political power. I think that that would be good, and he actually says, like, Christians are filled with the Holy Spirit, so wouldn't you want them in power and not an unbeliever?
Of course, Batman, of course.
But also as to whether or not he is authorized by God to do that. Just like asking if the civil magistrate is authorized by God to discipline my children. Now, on the issue of whether or not the civil magistrate is authorized and competent to judge in matters of religious worship, a thesis of mine that continues to come up is the importance of understanding Van Tillian epistemology, which I'll continue to do more work on in the future. It's important to understand that Van Tillian epistemology made more sense in a Presbyterian view of church and state that I kind of outlined earlier. And Van Til said that unbelievers cannot intelligibly interpret reality. And interestingly, the Presbyterian that forwarded this book is a very well-known and respectable Van Tillian scholar. And I don't think that James Anderson shouldn't say what he thinks and that James Baird shouldn't say what he thinks. Presby's gonna Presby. What I am saying is, can we have a little bit more self-awareness about the different systems that are at play here and let us have confessional conversations across the pond regarding political theology, but know where we do agree and disagree, and not mock when someone calls into question why a Baptist publishing house decided to publish this book.
It's a good question.
And I'm calling for Baptists to stay Baptist. Are we being nitpicky? Are particular Baptists just developing a reputation of being persnickety Baptists? No, we are asking whether or not in our Baptist convictions we want to shift our view to be such that in light of everything that has been suggested, whether or not we believe that an unbeliever can even be a civil magistrate. Or whether or not we want to say that in order to be a civil magistrate in America, we're going to change some things and we are going to require that they must be Protestant because they can't intelligibly interpret reality, which is kind of a super Van Tillian thing to say. And on this point of requiring civil officials to have a credible profession of faith in order to serve in office, consider this helpful reminder from Casey McCall. Quote, Baird's primary historical argument derives from the language of state constitutions in early America. McCall goes on to note that every single state disestablished by 1833. And then he also notes that Baird relegates this fact to a mere footnote. McCall says, quote, these early American actors did not end state religious establishments to suppress religion, but to preserve it. Then he asks, did it work? Did the decision to end state establishments lead to religion's increase in the United States? Comparing the cultural influence of religion in America today with the severe secularism in modern European nations with established churches suggests it did. McCall also notes that the strength of religion's power in America was the result of the separation of the Christian religion from political power. But did I even read it? No. I listened to it on Audible. Now these subtle Baptist, perhaps in your opinion, nitpicks have massive historical disagreements among Protestants. See, a lot of people don't realize that these pop conversations have deep, niche theological arguments way under the political hood. And what technology is doing is way oversimplifying this conversation so that if I read King of Kings and I disagree with some of the premises or conclusions, well then I'm a libtard. That's just algorithm brain talking. But what happens is Baptists see that it's getting increasingly harder to stay Baptist, and so they might give into the temptation, with all due respect to founders and Brother Tom Askell, to set aside some of those Baptist distinctives for the sake of ecumenism. I agree that Christianity is best for the public good, but the disagreement is how we go about it. So I think that we can and should advocate for government protecting Christians and Christianity, especially the Baptists. Advocate for the promotion of Baptist theology. Go to Founders and get all of your Christmas gifts from Founders because they deserve all your money. And stay Baptist, my friends. And thanks, Bretita and Zake, for joining our Patreon. It's great to have you aboard.
You should pop your collar up.